The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and expensive cologne. I sat across from Mr. Henderson, my late uncle's attorney, watching him slide a thick manila folder across his mahogany desk. "Your Uncle Gerald was quite the character," Henderson said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "He left you everything. The entire 1,000-acre property." I blinked. "I'm sorry, did you say 1,000 acres? "Indeed, including the land that Meadowbrook Estates currently sits on." My stomach dropped. "Wait, the HOA community? That massive neighborhood with like 300 homes?" Henderson nodded, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Every single house, every perfectly manicured lawn, every streetlight, all of it sits on your land. Your uncle leased it to the developer 40 years ago. That lease expired 6 months ago." I sat back, mind reeling. I'd barely known Uncle Gerald. He was my father's estranged brother, a recluse who'd made his fortune in timber and had apparently held on to this massive property while the world built around him. So what happens now? I asked. "Well, that's where it gets interesting. The HOA has been trying to negotiate a new lease, but your uncle refused to engage. Now they're dealing with you." 3 days later, I stood at the entrance of Meadowbrook Estates, taking in the pristine suburbia before me. Identical houses lined streets named after trees that had probably been cleared to build them. Every lawn was exactly 2 inches tall. Every mailbox was regulation black. My phone buzzed. An email from someone named Patricia Whitmore, president of the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. The subject line read, "Urgent meeting required." The meeting was that evening in the community center, a building that sat squarely in the middle of my inherited land. I arrived 15 minutes early and found the parking lot already full. Inside, the conference room was packed with angry faces. Patricia Whitmore stood at the front, a woman in her mid-50s with a helmet of blonde hair and a pearl necklace that probably cost more than my car. She spotted me immediately. "You must be Marcus Webb," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "How kind of you to finally show up. I got the email 3 hours ago." I replied evenly. She ignored that. "Everyone, this is the young man who thinks he can extort our community." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I felt dozens of eyes boring into me. "I'm not trying to extort anyone," I said. "I just inherited." "We know what you inherited," interrupted a bald man in a polo shirt. "And we know what you want. Money. Well, we're not going to be pushed around." Patricia held up her hand for silence. "Mr. Webb, let me make this very clear. Meadowbrook Estates has been here for 40 years. We are an established community. We have property rights." "Actually," I said, pulling out the folder Henderson had given me, "you have a lease that expired. And according to these documents, the original lease stated that at expiration, all structures would revert to the landowner unless a new agreement was reached." The room erupted. People shouted over each other. Someone called me a vulture. Another person threatened to sue. Patricia banged a gavel on the podium. "Enough. Mr. Webb, here's what's going to happen. You're going to accept our offer of a lease renewal at the current rate. We're generously giving you 30 days to sign, or we'll tie this up in court for years. You'll never see a penny." I looked around the room at all these people who'd probably never been told no in their lives. "I'll think about it," I said. 30 days, Patricia repeated. "Don't waste our time." I spent the next week doing research. I drove through every street of Meadowbrook Estates, taking notes. I reviewed the original lease agreement, the development contracts, every document Henderson could find. And I discovered something fascinating. The HOA had been making millions in fees, fines, and assessments. They'd used that money to build a golf course, a second community center, and an elaborate fountain at the entrance. All without my uncle's permission, all on his land. They'd even been charging residents for land lease pass-through fees that were supposedly going to the landowner. Uncle Gerald had never seen a dime of it. I called Henderson. "Can they actually do this?" "Absolutely not," he said. "Those structures were built in violation of the lease agreement. And if they've been collecting fees under false pretenses, that's fraud. You could sue for every dollar." I asked, "Or you can negotiate." What are you thinking, Marcus? I smiled. I'm thinking 30 days is a long time. On day 15, I sent my counteroffer to Patricia. A new lease agreement. Fair market rate. 30-year term, with provisions for resident protection and HOA accountability. It was actually generous, considering what I could have demanded. Patricia's response came within an hour, a single word. No. That evening, I received a certified letter. The HOA was giving me an ultimatum. Accept their terms in the remaining 15 days or face a class action lawsuit from all 300 homeowners. They'd already retained the services of Morrison & Associates, one of the most expensive law firms in the state. I called Henderson. They're bluffing, right? Probably. But Morrison & Associates doesn't take cases they can't win. They must think they have an angle. What angle? It's my land. Adverse possession, maybe? Or they might argue that the community has established property rights through continuous occupation. It's a stretch, but with enough money and time, they could make it painful for you. I sat in my apartment that night, staring at the documents spread across my coffee table. I thought about Uncle Gerald, alone in his big house, watching this neighborhood grow on his land like a tumor. I thought about why he'd let the lease expire, why he'd refuse to negotiate. Then I made my decision. The next morning, I showed up at the Meadowbrook Estates Community Center at 7 a.m. Patricia's Mercedes was already in the parking lot. I found her in her office, surrounded by legal documents. "Mr. Webb," she said, not looking up, "come to accept reality?" "Actually, I came to deliver something." I placed a document on her desk. Notice of immediate lease termination. She looked up sharply. "You can't." "I can, actually. According to Section 14, Paragraph 3 of the original lease, if fraud or misrepresentation is discovered, the lease can be terminated immediately. You've been collecting land lease pass-through fees from residents for 6 months. Fees you claim were going to the landowner. My uncle never received them. Where did that money go, Patricia?" Her face went white. That was for administrative costs. It was fraud. And the unauthorized construction of your golf course, the second community center, the fountain, all violations of the lease terms. I pulled out more documents. I have surveyors coming today to document everything. I have accountants ready to audit your books. And I have a very good lawyer who's excited about the case. Patricia stood up, her hand shaking. "You can't evict 300 families. I'm not evicting anyone. The homeowners aren't at fault. You are, but here's what's going to happen." I pulled out another document. This is a new lease agreement. Fair terms, resident protections, transparent accounting. You're going to sign it today. And if I don't, then I filed charges for fraud, sue the HOA for damages and unauthorized construction, and negotiate individual agreements with each homeowner. Cutting the HOA out entirely. You'll be removed as president. The board will be dissolved, and every family here will know that you've been stealing from them. I leaned forward. "You gave me 30 days, Patricia. I'm giving you 24 hours to make this right. Sign the lease, resign from the board, and return every penny of those fraudulent fees. Or, tomorrow morning, my lawyer files papers that will destroy everything you've built here." She stared at me, her carefully constructed authority crumbling. This is blackmail. This is justice. Your choice. 24 hours later, I stood in Henderson's office as he reviewed the signed documents. Patricia had resigned. The HOA board had been restructured with independent oversight. Every fraudulent fee was being returned to residents. And the new lease protected everyone, homeowners and landowner alike. "Your uncle will be proud," Henderson said. "He spent years trying to hold them accountable. They just waited for him to die. They thought I'd be easier to bully," I said. "Young, inexperienced, desperate for quick money." Instead, they got someone who actually read the contracts. Henderson smiled. "What will you do now?" I looked out the window at the city beyond. Make sure every family in Meadowbrook knows exactly who's been taking advantage of them. And then, I'm going to be the best landlord that HOA has ever seen, whether they like it or not. My phone buzzed. An email from the new HOA president. a retired teacher named Susan Chun whom the residents had elected that morning. The subject line read, "Thank you." I smiled. Uncle Gerald had held on to this land for a reason, not for profit, not for revenge. He'd held on to it because someone needed to stand up to people like Patricia Whitmore, people who thought power and pearl necklaces put them above the rules. 30 days, they'd said, like I was supposed to be grateful for their timeline, their terms, their world. But this was my land, my inheritance, my rules, and 24 hours was all it took to prove it.